My late father did a lot of charity work, and he would say to us that as bad as you think you have it, there's somebody who's got it worse. If you're cursing your secondhand car, someone's driving a bicycle. If you're cursing your bicycle, someone's walking with crutches. Okay, there's always somebody who has it worse. So the way to make yourself feel better about your station is to help out those that have less.
When did you decide to be a lawyer?
Oh, gosh.
Like you were born, you said Montreal.
Yeah.
And then you went to McGill. Was it McGill,
Yeah.
right?
It was, yeah. I entered McGill doing a bachelor's degree in psychology.
Okay.
With a plan to go into speech therapy.
Okay.
I have a huge family. Yeah. My eldest cousin, who I was at the time pretty close with, was a speech therapist in New York. Okay. She worked with the deaf and some people with other challenges. Mm. And I used to go and hang out with her, and I thought, cool job. I didn't want to work with deaf. I wanted to work with people who'd lost the ability to speak with aphasics, stroke, or other thing, head injuries. I thought that would be so cool. Well,
why?
I don't know. It just is something that interested me. And
is it seeing somebody like succeed, grow out of it, or facing a challenge with them? Or?
Well, I've always had a teaching instinct, and I've tutored through high school and college and into McGill as well, just to cash pocket money. And I'm told I'm a good teacher, and I liked what my cousin did, working with speech. And for someone who speaks a lot, sure, why not? It interested me. I like the idea of helping someone. But there are, at the time, maybe it's changed, there are 6 schools in all of Canada that offer speech therapy degrees, and they're all master's programs. You don't have straight A's, you're not getting in. Right. I got into McGill as a very bright kid. I'd had a, B plus A minus average, I think, from college. I don't know. I graduated with honors from college. And I thought, I'll ace this. And no, I struggled. I got out with a B plus A minus average.
I think that's called a wake-up call?
Yeah. I actually had to study. I had to put in some work. Oh, my God. Right. But, so I could have worked on, finishing my BA and then taking courses and trying to improve my chances. But somewhere along the line, somebody had said to me, and I think it was a boyfriend, who said, you just argue so much, you should be a lawyer.
Huh.
And that was always a running joke, is that I'm so argumentative, I should get paid for it. I thought,
if you're good at something.
Yeah, okay. Well, I did a lot of theater, so, trial is theater. And I thought, okay, I'm not afraid of crowds, I'm not afraid of public speaking. Okay, let's go for it.
And that's what moved you to Ontario?
No, just I did not want to stay in Montreal to practice law. Mm. I'm fluent in French, but I just did not want the everyday of having to think through everything in French. And it was the Jewish Montrealer upperly mobile thing to do. Pack your bag and move to Toronto.
Okay.
This is early 80s. This was past one of the referendums already. Mm. But it's separatism was still there, and we all were concerned. So I headed out in 84. I had been to Paris before I'd ever been to Toronto. Go figure.
Yeah.
Living in Montreal, it was not the thing.
I hear it the other way around, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. From people from Ontario saying that all the time.
Yeah.
When you made the move, when you're thinking about that, and then later you tell me that it truly is. It's a little bit of a different culture, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Call it even a culture shock, someone would say.
Mm-hmm.
You're a bright person. You're obviously into psychology. Even you would say then that you ran into a culture shock.
Yeah.
So you're moving. Mm-hmm. So you are expecting something to be different.
Mm-hmm.
So then why did you get shocked?
Well.
Why would you say that? How did that happen?
You know what? Well, for starters, I went to McGill, which is downtown Montreal, which is busy, bustling in the middle of the city. Sure. And if you had a 3-hour break between classes, there was so many things to do. Right. It's downtown Montreal. I went to Osgoode for law school, which is York University, which is Steeles and Keel. In 1984, there were fields surrounding Steeles and Keel. Okay. So, you have a 3-hour break between classes.
Right.
Go home and study.
Right. Right.
So there's that. I had no family here when I first moved. I was the loner. I had a lot of friends. Well, I shouldn't say a lot of friends. I knew a lot of people who were here.
Sure.
Because, like I said, it was
There's a community.
the thing to do.
Right.
Yeah. And every time I turned a corner, there was somebody else I knew. I remember going into the main building at York, Central Square, and I opened the door, and one of my cousin's friends who I knew from high school was standing on the other side of the door. And we looked at each other and just burst out laughing. Yeah. And she said, "Oh, I heard Sherry's cousin moved to Toronto, but I forgot you're Sherry's cousin."
Right.
And so, and we're good friends to this day. She lives 2 blocks north of me. And our kids are friends, and that was also a funny thing. My kid comes home from school and says, "My friend so-and-so says his mommy went to high school with you." I said,
yeah. That's awesome.
Didn't half of everybody.
So you could have anticipated these things.
Yeah.
But then, and you did, it sounds like you knew Osgood, you knew,
I didn't understand that I was going to be in the middle of nowhere. My brother kept telling me, "You're moving to Downsview, not Toronto." Okay. So.
Right.
Yeah. And just, I was high and I'm moving to Toronto.
There's also that anticipation. You're going to have a good time, right? So it kind of, it can, sometimes it acts almost as a lens, right?
Yeah. Well, and then there's the culture in Montreal is very different than the rest of Canada because it's got that French-Canadian influence.
Sure.
And from that, it's got like a European influence. Montrealers work to live. They don't live to work. So
if you're saying that you were looking to get out of Montreal.
Yeah.
So that's different than somebody who had to move because oh my gosh, there's no opportunity here, whatever. Mm-hmm. You're looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And so, but yet you still also find this something that presents itself as, let's just say, even a challenge.
Yeah.
Right. When do you first start looking at something like a big culture change going, wait, this is different and I'm going to have to do something about this. I'm not comfortable right here. Mm-hmm. When does that first start sinking in? Like, this is not ideal right now.
Yeah.
For me.
I remember in my first year law school, I bonded with a girl who's still my very best friend, my BFF. Yeah. We were in the same section, and we've been friends for 40 years.
Yeah.
But I remember I got fixed up by somebody with a guy. Went out on my first date. I remember calling my mother, telling me I'm going out. The guy's taking me out for dinner. And then she said, "Call me when you get home. I want to hear all about it." And I call her, and it's about 10 or 11 p.m. And she said, "You're home?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Where did you go?" I said, "Out for dinner." "Okay, well, when did he pick you up?" I said, 6. She said, "Who goes out for dinner at 6?
Right.
I said, "That's what they do here, apparently." I said, "Mom, they have something called last call." "What's that?" "They stop serving booze after 1 o'clock in the morning." "They stop serving?" I said, "Yeah, somebody asked me when's last call in Montreal." And I said, "When they close the bar."
Hey, exactly.
3, 4, I don't know. I said, "Well, I've never heard of this." And she said, "Who eats dinner so early?" "Well, what did you do afterwards?" "Well, there's not much of anything to do afterwards." So he took me on a drive so I could see the sights and then came home. She said, "Who gets home from a date on a Saturday night at 11 p.m.? I said, "I don't know." And she said, "In Montreal, you're going out the door at 11 p.m.
So when this is happening, that's a really good example because, you still, when you had a date, you had to get.
Yeah.
What are the adjustments that you start thinking about making? Are you even thinking about making adjustments? How does that?
Well, it's either date other Montrealers or just adapt to it.
Right.
But, even other Montrealers would be faced with the last call problem because that was
what happens, though? A lot of times is when people face something like that. That's a good one, especially socially. Mm-hmm. They sort of look at it, and that becomes an impediment to all their other areas, right? Whether it's academic, whether it's career, the social side. Hey, this is not what I'm used to. And then there's this wanting to get back to comfortable. Mm-hmm. Did you experience that? Wanting to go back?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Even though you were looking to leave at first?
Yeah. Yeah. And I struggled. I had a roommate who we didn't hit it off. It didn't work out. She found a boyfriend and she just wasn't around. So I felt very alone.
Sure.
And I was struggling with school. Law school's a different way of handling things.
Right.
And I remember calling one of my girlfriends to talk, and I ended up talking to her mother. And I said, "I'm just, fed up with this." And she said, "Okay, I guess we just throw out the dream and that's it. You come back here and find something to do." I'm like, "Wait, no."
Oh.
She says, "Well, yeah, you said you want to pack it up. So I guess that's it. You're not going to be a lawyer." "Well, no, I want to be a lawyer." "Well, then you have to go to law school to be a lawyer. So do you want to come back and go to McGill?" I said, "Hell no." Is it going to be any different if you go somewhere else? It probably will be worse because the other schools are in smaller towns. And I'm a big city girl. I'm a Montreal, New York girl. And here I am kind of in the outskirts of Toronto, but still Toronto. I said, if I move to Kingston to go to Queens, it's not going to be better. Right. If I move to London and go to Western, it's not going to be better. I mean, this is the biggest city offering law school. And she said, well, suck it up, buttercup. And I'm like, yeah, okay, it will get better. And you just tell yourself it will get better, and kept going.
I just think about the conversations like that we have. And I'm thinking, you could have said it to yourself.
Yeah.
But had that not happened, that conversation, that day, that time, you were thinking about packing it up, heading back.
Yeah.
And life just takes a completely different path after that. But so a call like that is pretty memorable. What is it, like an intervention of some sort? Somebody standing there and saying this to you, but they can say everything they want to say. You still have to do the work, the adjustment. Yeah. So then what did you decide? Okay, suck it up, buttercup. What does that mean?
Yeah, well, it means find a way to make it work for you.
And how did you do that?
Well, I got involved in some extracurricular groups. I had a bowling league with ex-Montrealers, with some people I knew from home.
Right.
So that helped. So. And
the funny part is that was always there.
Yeah.
Right? It was always there.
Yeah.
But it took that moment to go, hey, I'm not interested here. I'm not interested in this sort of way. And some interested people got connected there as well. And it ends up playing a role. But it's one of those, one of my favorite sayings almost like of Einstein is, when they say, don't find the needle in the haystack, find every needle. And, sometimes we find, this works, but not so much. And then there's this, it's already there, but this realization comes later going, wait, there's more I could do here.
Yeah.
So you started doing some things a little bit differently. What else did you do differently, Jude?
Yeah. Well, I was there to study, so had to turn my focus to that.
Kind of helps you get your priorities aligned.
Yep. Yeah. I made friends with a core group of people, most of whom I'm still friends with to this day.
When did you start noticing it now getting better? I mean, was it instantaneously or?
No, it was probably when I went home for Christmas break and I missed everybody. I thought I would go home for Christmas and it would be just such a relief to be home and back in the nest and everything familiar. And but I missed my friends. I missed the independence of being in my own apartment and not having someone make all my meals, as strange as that may sound. I had gotten used to taking care of myself. And it's nice to be taken care of from time to time, but sure. If it's not your norm, it gets irritating at some point, which it did. It's like, Mom, I could make toast. I don't need you.
Isn't that the funny thing about growth, eh?
Yeah.
You're, as it's happening, we're not necessarily
aware of it. Yeah.
And then when one moment it's like, what's that fish out of water? Like you now finally see hey, there are some things that are going on, and you get that comfort. Was it like that tells you you're assimilating well. Yeah. So one of the kind of earlier challenges, life's telling you, I got plans for you.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna make you grow, Franceen.
Yeah.
But no, thanks for pausing to reflect on that. When you get through law school, and I think for lawyers as well, I gotta say, especially a field like law, and it's something I've always had in my peripheral interest in doing. So I have great admiration for people who go through what they go through to be a lawyer, because it's not an easy track, and I think sometimes that's by design too, right? They really throw it at you a certain way.
I'll tell you, in 1987, in my graduating class of 300, we were maybe 20 to 30% women. Maybe.
Right.
So I'd heard recently that it was 51-49, more women than men, which was shocking.
Can you imagine, right?
Yeah. I remember that we counted how many women there were in our class. And we got, Osgood, you're 300, and they separate you into 5 sections of 60 in the first year anyways. And in my group of 60, maybe 15 women, maybe 20. And
so that's that's a challenge. That's a noticeable challenge, or what? Like,
well, when you
what's
graduate,
the big deal?
Well, when you graduate, you've got an article. You have to go work for someone else who supervises you for 11 months, and they're established firms. So if in 1987 there's only 25% women in your class, think of how many women there are already in practice that have been in practice for 10 years. That number is going to be less. So, again, it was still a glass ceiling that somebody started to chip away at, but not a lot. I ended up working at a firm, not for articles, but in my first year. I joke that I was EDI before EDI was a thing. They had 20-ish lawyers and 1 woman partner, and they hired me and another woman as associates that year. And they were very white and very Catholic. And so they hired, a Jewish woman from Montreal. Oh, look, we can say that we're equal opportunity employer, right? Because look what we brought on board. They hired me without the intention of keeping me because they just didn't train me. They didn't work with me. They didn't mentor me at all.
Well, how do you know that was not a ceiling? How do you know that was just not the way things are done? I felt the same way, and I've talked to so many people who felt the same way. Like, I've actually been told sometimes in my years that you don't really do well training people. You're not very clear. And I didn't know I was even doing that, or I wasn't being such a great trainer.
Yeah. Well, years later, the one woman partner said to me, we didn't do a great job of mentoring you. And I said, you didn't mentor me at all. At all.
Right.
I would flounder, and then you would tell me what I was doing wrong, but you didn't necessarily give me the guidance on how to correct it. And that would have helped. And I don't know that anybody else necessarily got it. I'm not saying that the men that you hired got mentored. Maybe they didn't either. But you made more of a deal about my flubs and flaws than anybody else's. I'm not sure why. Or at least that's how I saw it.
Sure.
Anyways, they've gone out. That firm no longer exists.
So you noticed this, like when you started coming into the industry.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's not just about being on stage. It's not just about debating and arguing. There are these sort of elements now that you're kind of awakening to, going, hey, the playing field is not leveled. There is all sort of isms, nepotisms, and all kinds of isms going on. And, at first when you start seeing that, it's almost like when you first got to Ontario. It's like, so this is what it's like.
Yep.
Right? And there's this feeling of like, now what was it when you start saying this is not what you were like looking forward to experiencing?
Yeah, no.
You call that same lady back?
Tell me again. Yeah.
What did you do then?
Well, I had done my articles at a small firm with a senior partner who was and is a wonderful man who took me everywhere. I had great exposure, and that was the benefit in working for a 4-person firm. I went everywhere. And he would introduce me as his hardest working articling student ever. And he would tell me, I'm taking this to Court of Appeal. You'll go with me. Maybe you'll be in your gown by then and you'll be able to sit next to me. So he took me everywhere. And I left there because we couldn't work out a deal for me to stay. They lowballed me. And I said, I'm good, not cheap. I mean, you've told me I'm worthwhile, so I want to be paid my worth. In retrospect, was that a good idea? I don't know. I went into the bigger firm where I got paid almost double, but I was treated poorly. And every time somebody there would suggest I didn't have my act together, I thought, well, no. According to the senior partner who's equal to the partners at this place, nobody's a better lawyer, he thought I had my act together and advertised me as his smartest, hardest working articling student ever. So he can't be wrong. Why would he be wrong? I think it's more you're wrong than he's wrong. That's it.
Although the chronology of that works in the opposite direction, right? Like somebody after telling you that you're worth your salt and worthwhile, somebody after that telling you you're not worthwhile, you think like this is more recent information and updated, but you go the other way around and you're like, hey, no, excuse me.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Well, the person who was putting me down was not well liked in the community. He was respected as a good lawyer, but nobody liked him. And so
never heard of that.
When I interviewed afterwards, and people would say, "Oh, so you're leaving Mr. Duke?" and I'd say, "Yeah, we have a personality conflict. I have one.
Oh boy,
he doesn't."
Oh, yeah.
And nobody challenged me like, "How could you possibly leave working for this person?" People were like, "How long did you last?" Because he's known as a miserable human being. Great lawyer, miserable human being. I said, the problem is I'm not a client, so I'm not working.
But working in these kind of environments, it's interesting. Like you have I call it like I'm allergic to it. Like just being around this type of an energy. And you can only take it for so long before you feel like it's starting to actually have take a toll on you.
Sure.
Did you feel that?
Yeah.
How? Like how do you feel like it's taking a toll on you?
Well, at that point, it's, affected my self-worth. I didn't think I was a good lawyer. And
the facts hadn't changed. Like you'd still gone to law school. You'd still been given these accolades.
Yeah, and I would still do my work and do it well. I would be sent to court to argue something and I would succeed. And yet I would come back and be told that I hadn't succeeded enough or in the right way. I'll give you an example, and I hope it's not too technical. One of the partners
it's too technical.
One of the partners gave me an assignment. Another lawyer had promised productions and they hadn't come through. So go bring an application to court to force delivery of the productions. Okay, so I put together the application, serve the guy. He calls me up the night before and says, "Okay, all right, I promise I'll give you everything. I don't want to go to court to argue this. What do you need to go away?" I said, "I need a promise that I'm going to get everything in 30, 60, 90 days, whatever was the norm back then. And you'll pay my costs of having to prepare this material and file it." Well, he grumbled and grumbled and grumbled, but he finally gave in. And so I went to court the next day with a consent order saying, okay, he consents to everything I asked for in my application, just seal the order. And so I've got a formal order. You think this is a win? The partner came down on me because he said, "We don't like this lawyer. We don't consent to anything with him." And I said, "But he agreed to everything I asked for. So how much more can I win?" No, you should not have taken his call." Well, no, there's ethics. Rules of ethics that say, you treat the other side with respect and dignity, and you're there to represent a client, not represent your feelings against another lawyer. The client wants this done expeditiously in the least expensive way. Come on. No, we don't agree to do anything with him. I have to show the client that you got an order on consent. I said, I really think all the client cares about is that I got the order. No, and all over the memo, it was, report to senior partner, speak to senior partner. And I thought, I did the right thing. What, I didn't do it right enough? How much more of a win can you have than a win? So
you start even like doubting the win itself. Yeah. Wow.
And
even though it's still a win.
Yeah. I mean, I've told this story at a women's law event last year when we were talking about bullying. And I said, I did everything right. I mean, if you had this assignment and this is how you finished the assignment, you would think, yeah, good on me. I got everything that was asked for, and I didn't have to go to court and argue it. I got everything. And somehow this was wrong. And they said, well, let's say you did it his way. You show up in court. The other lawyer shows up and says, Your Honor, I called her last night and I was ready to give her everything, but she refused. The judge would turn on you with, why are you wasting everyone's time? I said, well, somehow that would have been the better result because at least I would have argued. Never mind that. I leave that judge with a bad taste for me going forward. And I may have gotten costs against me as opposed to in favor of me for wasting court time. But yeah, that seems to be the way that they wanted to go, just to prove a point to the other lawyer. And yeah. I just realized that it was a vendetta with the lawyer, not so much doing what the client needed us to do.
When does it start? Like, when does the feeling start coming in also that, like, you know, it's Sunday and tomorrow I got to go back to this, right? And then it starts sinking in. And then do you feel like it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because now you don't want to put in the same effort. And now, obviously, if you're not going to put in the same effort, the results are also going to be, you know, impacted. And then it kind of like momentum in that direction.
Well, after I was let go from that firm, I got into another firm pretty quickly. And I was single. I was late 20s. Yeah. No, I don't think I was 30 yet. And I pretty much made it my life. I had a schedule of, you know, Wednesday night I worked till 8 or 9 or 10. Friday I left at 6. I came in on Sundays. In fact, when I didn't come in one Sunday, they called my apartment to see that I was still alive.
So you said you got let go, though.
But I was let go.
When you were let go, I mean, at that point in time, before you decide to go and get another job, you remember that? Did you feel like when you were let go at that point, did you feel that, okay, well, I'll just go find another job? Or were there actual moments where you're like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah, I was devastated.
Seriously? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was devastated. I'd never been fired.
Right.
I was always, employee of the month. So this devastated me that someone didn't like me, didn't think my work was valuable.
And do you say to yourself, Franceen, snap out of it, you're great, and just carry on, or?
No, we get Franceen into therapy. and I remember the therapist saying to me, well, did you have any friends at this firm? I said, no. And they said, why not? And I said, I wasn't going door to door figuring out the motivations of 25 other people. They didn't like me. They didn't like me.
How did you know to say to yourself, Franceen, we're going to go get a trainer. We're going to go get some assistance.
Because if you can't get out of bed in the morning and all you do is weep, you got to do something. You got to move forward. If you have a problem, you fix it. That was it. I mean, I wasn't.
But when we're in that state of mind, right? I'm just trying to understand this. Like, if I'm getting out of bed, all day, it's an intelligent thought. It's logical what you're doing.
Yeah.
But logic isn't really much connected to my brain at that point in time. It's just like I'm here and then I just stay. How do you, like, was it the first day, the second day, the third day that you finally said, or this is enough, or of this state? Did you felt like you went through a certain amount of time feeling this way before, like, okay, the logic starts resurfacing?
Yeah.
Like, how long? Like,
yeah. I can't recall how long. It took a while to digest it.
Yeah.
And I was on my own in Toronto and had rent to pay. So, reality bites. It's get your act together. You've got to go on and find another job. This wasn't meant for you. Just go forward. And, I came to the conclusion that I was hired not to be kept on. I saw historically that's what that firm did.
Okay.
They had a pyramid. So they hired every year a lot of people and, attrition. So few at the top, lots at the bottom. And I was part of the attrition process. That's fine. One of my classmates who was hired at the same time as me is now a judge and went to school with me, in fact. And he said to me, had I worked for the partner you worked for, I don't know that I would have stayed.
Right.
Because you worked for the hardest guy and he was just brutal to you. I said, yeah, well, sometimes you pick them well and sometimes you don't. That time I didn't pick well. But got to a point.
But that was also somewhat out of your control too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. He presented himself in the interview differently and he had a great reputation as being a brilliant lawyer. And you know what? He probably was a brilliant lawyer. I didn't get to see him in action on anything, but being a brilliant lawyer doesn't equal being a brilliant person.
So it's amazing, right? The very, I mean, if I was just to look at it like an abstract, I mean, here it is again, something to look forward to. Turns out to be a shocker on the other side of it. And really deflating, leaves you, even though you're anticipating a high advancement, feeling like you said, you don't get out of bed in the morning. Growth or not growth? What would you call that? I'm curious.
It's growth. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, because
growth sucks.
Yeah, but
does it always
you have to own up which part is yours,
right,
and accept that it's not all yours. Sometimes circumstances put you in places that are beyond your control, as you said. So, I got hired by somebody who thought I looked good on paper for him. I said I don't know what his motivations were. I'll never know. And
where exactly would you call the growth taking place in all of this? Well,
it's a self-realization that it's a lot of it is him and some of it is me.
Okay.
I'm not such a narcissist that I'd say it's all him, but yeah. I realize.
But what were your growth? What did you gain out of those experiences?
Well, that I wasn't going to let one person get me down, that it was one bad experience. I'd never been fired from a job before. It's not meant to be as philosophical as you want.
Well, no, I've read that actually, success is not never falling down. It's you having known that somebody fell down and then got up. That's success.
Yeah, well, they say
meets the definition now a little more than somebody who's just kind of coasting, right?
Well, that's it. They say you see the lovely iceberg on the surface. You don't see all the stuff underneath that it came to get there. But there's life is going to have its struggles, and this was one of them, and that's it. So, okay, onward, upward.
So you decided on getting support.
Yeah. It wasn't.
Did somebody suggest that to you? Like, how did you form that idea? To me, I think that's a critical step.
Yeah, I have a good friend who was my family physician. Is still a family physician, but no longer my family physician for a lot of reasons that have nothing to do with our relationship. But I probably said something, and I know I asked her for a recommendation for therapist because I said, I've got to get out of this mess because I'm just. Not able to think straight. I'm just so depressed by all of this. I can't move forward.
Today, the top performers in the world all have one. Like sports therapists, psychologists, the best. You see this as like a part of their team. And not just every so often. It's routinely. They check in and like you exercise your muscles, you exercise your emotions, you talk through it, you get yourself prepared. But back then, it wasn't seen the same way necessarily. It was like, what's wrong with you? And kind of maybe a little bit taboo.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Weakness.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
And that came up much later in my career where I should have taken a mental health leave and I didn't because I knew I would be tagged as weak.
Right.
I had someone along the line tell me that as litigators, we were the lean, mean fighting machines. And we could be faced with stories. I did personal injury work, so I was faced with stories of people who had horrific injuries. Don't show any sympathy, don't show any empathy. And I found that disconcerting. We're all human. Even if I was representing somebody who denied causing the harm, I could still feel bad for the person who had been harmed. And, tell them, I'm sorry you were hurt. I'm sorry you feel you were hurt.
Right.
If you don't want to acknowledge that there's an actual hurt, that's fine. But, it was not the thing to do. But coming from a psychology background,
right,
you know that when certain thoughts are taking over, you've got to do something. And there's another way of looking at it. And this I credit my girlfriend with. She said, if you were diabetic and your sugars were off, you'd take medication, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, your brain isn't getting all the good stuff. You're not getting enough dopamine. So if you don't want to take meds, then go talk to somebody about how to rewire the circuits so you will feel better.
I think that's such an important step.
Yeah.
It's such an important step for us when we get to a point where we're like, like if I sprained an ankle, I'd get a brace. Yeah. So it makes sense and it works, right?
But it's only recently that mental health is health.
Right.
It wasn't 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, forget about it. No.
So when you're heading into like a session with a therapist, your first time going in there, there's always, again, you look forward, you think about what the experience is going to be like. You have this thought already going in that like something's wrong, and feeling like, I don't know if this is the right thing to do even, or was it like, I'm going to go in there and this is going to work? How was...
I'm going to go in there, you're going to give me some advice to help me get back on track. And the therapist I had then was not the right therapist for my needs.
So even then, right?
Yeah. Well, he eventually branched out and went off to specialize in eating disorders, which was not my problem.
Right.
But which proved to me that he was not the right person to deal with my issues, but he did give me some good comments. And then when I got hired on for the next job, immediately my self-esteem swelled up because I was competing with 2 other people who were both men, and I beat them out. I got the job. So I went on to the next place. And like I said, it became my life. I worked a lot. And just before I turned 30 or 31, it's suddenly occurred to me that I had not been on a date in a long time. My cousin, who had been living with me, the one who now lives in Winnipeg, she was getting married. And my friends were married. I was alone. And this was not what I wanted out of life. I did want to do well in my legal career, but I didn't think that was to the exclusion of doing well in my personal life. And I was just... work had become my life. There was no social life. Yeah. So, Saturday when I didn't have a date, it was almost a relief because I got a day to just relax and do my laundry or read a book or just go to bed at 7 p.m. or something like that. And
didn't have Netflix back then either.
Yeah, it didn't. No. I had a VCR though. I recorded a lot of things. But, my husband jokes about, didn't you watch some show in the 90s, Seinfeld? We'll see episodes now. And I said, I didn't have time for TV. You don't understand. I was constantly working.
When you're going through this, right? It had to have felt, I imagine, that like, this is like, am I the only one going through? Like, do you feel like you're the only one going through this experience? Because others, you look around and people seem to be they keep on moving. They seem very functional.
Yep.
You feel quite like this is a very unique case.
Yeah, I felt very much the unicorn. I didn't have anyone that I could turn to. There was no role model for me, female lawyer, not in my family at the time.
Right.
One of my older cousins became a lawyer, but it was her second career. She did it at 40, and I think around the same time as me, or maybe a little after me, but she'd been a school teacher and she was married, and it was different. So, I thought it was a bit odd, but I worked a lot. I remember the billing target was 1,600 or 1,700 hours, and I pulled off 2,000. And I remember I'd billed $250,000 in 1991 dollars.
Yeah.
And I wasn't taking home even 100,000 at that point. And I remember turning to the partner I worked for, and I said, when am I going to get a piece of this? I've sacrificed a personal life. When is that going to pay off? Like, when am I going to be a partner? And he said, I've never had a woman partner. Yeah. And I said, do I read that as I never will have a woman partner, or it's just never occurred to me, or there's never been, enough women in the firm to consider it, or a woman who worked hard enough to consider it? I was attracting my own work. The clients were happy with me. It was all good. And he just kind of, and left it at that. And I thought, no, this isn't going to work out. He's just not going to look at me as a potential partner. He doesn't see me as a potential equal. I get it now that I'm not his equal. He's got, 15, 20 years on me. That's fine. But you don't even see it that I could be there. You don't see me as being on the same level as you. So why am I giving up so much of myself, of my life, for not even the monetary reward? I wasn't making that much money. I mean, if you think I billed the firm $250,000, if you take my salary and my overhead out, there was probably still $100,000 left over that he was getting.
Right.
Which was more than what I was getting. So I'm working this hard to benefit you more than me. No, that's not it. So
while telling you you're failing, right?
Yeah. So we at that point the relationship dynamic changed, and suddenly I could do no right.
Do you know? When you're going through it, right? You're thinking, I'm a unicorn. Mm-hmm. It's amazing how many times I've heard this story repeated over and over and over again. Like now, after years of looking back on it, how many times have you heard this, Franceen?
Yeah.
And every single time that you've heard this, that person's actually feeling like the unicorn as well. Mm-hmm. Well, they're not unicorns then.
Yeah.
If there's so many of this, so many of these experiences being lived, and this is real. This is not some, right? Amazing though, when you are going through it, you feel like you are. And I find that to be really, really interesting, like reflecting on it. When we look around, everyone seems to be just moving, functioning just fine from the outside. You talk to many people and they feel like I'm a unicorn. And at what point in time did you then say, let's just say in your reality, right, in your experience, you're saying, okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to change this again. And I feel like every single time, right? Yeah. You're looking forward to something, and then there's this moment that it's like not a shocker, but things really change in an impermanent way, right? And the news that comes at you is not like, hey, congratulations, you've reached this level, let's go to the next. It just sounds very different. You are going to the next level. We agree it is growth, but it doesn't sound like that at that moment.
Well, I leave there. I float around for years. I take on other jobs where I'm constantly working for somebody else.
Right.
And in some of those, I'm very happy. And in some of those, not so much. And so fast forward, I guess, about 20 years of working in different places for different people. I was working for a firm where, again, personal injury, but we were representing injured people. The office was a disaster. I was hired on because I had lots of experience. I had trial experience. I was considered valuable. I was told I didn't have to be a rainmaker. There's a lot of work. You don't have to go look for it. And it was close to home, so it was nice commuting-wise and all of that. I get there, and I call myself a firefighter because every day there's some fire I'm putting out because the person before me just left things in a total disaster. And my nerves are on edge. And I just am so used to getting paid every 2 weeks that the thought of just walking out and having nothing, it just does not occur to me. It's just not a possibility. So I stay on a few months longer, and I talked to my husband and I said, I'm really not happy with this. And you know what? I'm tired of trying to prove myself to somebody else. It's time to take control. I'm good at what I do. I think I can turn this around and work as a mediator. I've worked now both sides of the files. I've worked plaintiff, I've worked defense. I understand them. I've taken trials on both sides. I think that and the psychology background and my natural empathy, I think I would be a good mediator. And you know what? If it doesn't work out, I could always go back to practicing law because nobody's taken away my ticket. So I interviewed with a firm to do defense work around this time while we're trying to decide what I'm going to do. And it's a prominent firm, and the senior partner was a classmate of mine. And I think it was a panel of 5 or 6 or 8 people that I met with. And you expect to hear back within a reasonable amount of time. And I get, well, we kind of still have not decided. And I thought, what's with that? Because if you want me, you want me. There's no hedging. I mean, I don't know. Do you have to have a quorum? You have to have 7 people say yes? I have no idea. But I was getting a little uncomfortable. And I figured it's a no. Because if it's a yes, I would have heard, pack your bags, come on board. And then finally, when he said to me, yeah, it's a no, I thought, you know what? Thank you, because you've just helped me make up my mind. I'm tired of waiting around for someone to decide that I'm good enough for them. So I'm starting my own business as a mediator. That's it. And it was scary because, I started it up 3 months before I left the business, but I didn't do anything, didn't earn any money for about 3 to 6 months. So we lived off of savings and whatever odd job I could pick up doing things. But I said, give it a try. And like I said, if it doesn't work out, I could always go back to practicing law.
You know what's interesting to me that you said, and you skipped right over it,
mm-hmm.
It's like, I floated around for 20 years.
Yeah.
You said that it only took like a millisecond for you to say it. But it's 20 years.
Yeah.
And when you look back on it, it's not a short period. 2 years is a long period of time.
Yeah.
There are people right now that are stuck in space for a few months.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's crazy, right? Mm-hmm. To be stuck somewhere for a few months, a few weeks, a day, a year, 2 years, 20 years. Mm-hmm. And this is like, I'll wrap here. I think we have at least one more episode. I think so.
Yeah.
But, because I'm learning so much here. In that 20 years, like you reflect on it.
Mm-hmm.
20 years, it was just like that. You look at it. But then you think those 20 years really helped you to build for that one moment when you're like, thank you.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell where in those 20 years every little brick came together.
It is. I'll tell you, after I had my first child, I was hired on a contract for, I don't know if I should say, TTC. And
we can always edit stuff.
You can edit that out, but it's the truth. So it's not that I'm disparaging anybody. I'm not telling lies. Right. This is what happened. I was hired at legal department TTC on a contract in June of 1998. They were impressed with my work that by November of 1998, they took me off contract and made me permanent. By February of 1999, I announced that I was pregnant. Mm-hmm. I had struggled. I had gone through fertility, and it worked first time. So we were extraordinarily happy. My boss's comment to me was, I took you off contract, and to thank me, you went out and got pregnant. Yeah. I said, yeah, I did it to you. Yeah, my revenge plan. You're paying me more money. You've given me a permanent position. I'll show you. I'll get pregnant. Yeah, it's like I guess he hired me in my late 30s and figured that part of my life was spoken for, and he, that's not something you're allowed to ask questions about on interviews anyway. So he was quite surprised. But at that point, after that point, again, I could do no right. Mm. And I went on my mat leave. I came back from my mat leave, and somebody had made the comment that I was clock watching. And I said, well, yeah, I got to pick up a kid at daycare. Mm. So, yeah. But the bigger point is, am I getting my work done? Because even though we're municipal employees, my day doesn't end at 5. I go home, I make dinner, and I read my files for the next day. So if I had to clock my hours, I wasn't putting in 8. I was putting in probably 11 or 12. But they were just looking at the FaceTime that I was there. And then we discovered that my son had issues. He wasn't developing as he should have. And I said to my boss, it was affecting me, I said, they think Adam has autism. And he kind of blew that off. Like, can't be. Oh, you're just neurotic. Well, no, I'm not. I've had him seen by specialists who we respect. Although there was one specialist who said, no, he's fine. Well, one guy was wrong. 3 guys were right. Mm-hmm. But somehow he flipped that into 3 guys were wrong and 1 guy was right. And I'm just being a neurotic mother. And, found ways to pick on me. And as I said earlier, I should have taken a mental health leave. I didn't. Somebody else was on short-term disability leave for whatever reason, and the talk around town was weak. This person's weak. They couldn't handle whatever. They're off. They're weak. And I thought, if I take a mental health leave, I'm out of here. Mm. That's it. I am out of here because they're going to call me weak. They're going to brand me, and they'll find a way to let me go. So I tried to deal with all the things all the balls I was juggling at the same time, trying to maintain the practice, trying to deal with a special needs kid where I had no frame of reference. No one sent me the booklet on how to raise special needs child.
Right.
As I tell everybody, my son has autism. The book on how to raise your child with autism somehow didn't end up in my mailbox. Like, where is the guidebook?
Right.
So, yeah, I made a lot of mistakes, but who knew better? There was no footpath. You had to forge your own. And I worked at a company, TTC, whereas if I took my problems to HR, what were they going to do to me? Put me in a different department? No.
Right.
I was going to end up back with the person I complained about. So it wasn't going to make life better. So there really was no way around this. And, things didn't work out. And he said to me, I find you're not putting in the work that you did. The quality of your work is suffering. And I said to him, I'm having a hard time dealing with Adam's disabilities. And he's like, ugh, that again. Yeah. And this is a man who has 2 children, 2 sons. I expect that from somebody without children.
So, Franceen,
yeah.
Clearly you've worked hard. Clearly, when you go think about getting into Osgood, not easy.
Top 20% of my LSAT.
Right. All of this. And even for those who go as far as they do academically, you can solve a challenge, you can solve a problem that comes your way. When these things come at us, I find it amazing how you have always sure, you take the hit, but then you're like, this is what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. And just standing up to say that. Mm-hmm. Somebody said you can look up or you can look down. Mm-hmm. And you keep looking up. That's why I just wanted to pick your brain and hear it from your point of view, because a lot of times people just, I don't want to use, either give up and they go back to Montreal, whatever means, they just move backward. What do you say today, looking back 20 plus years, 30 years, it seems like, if when you're going through it, you just feel like you're the only one. Mm-hmm. But now imagine, you must know better than anyone else how many people actually deal with this, and there's no book, right? At least when you're there, it doesn't look like one's popping out of the shelf for you. What do you say to them, who want to give up because you didn't?
Well, I didn't give up because to me, that would have branded me a failure. And I couldn't accept that. I am not a failure. So I fought through it. It was hard. I'm choking up. I'm sorry. But sometimes there aren't choices because, you can't stay where you are and not move forward. Everything and everybody will fall apart. And so you have to move. There's a saying that you were given this mountain to show that it can be moved. Yeah. And sometimes I think, okay, that's the plan. I've been given this mountain to climb to show somebody else it can't be climbed. I have a friend, we haven't talked about my breast cancer journey, but I have a friend who recently came through the same surgery I did. Right. And she said, I knew I could get through it because I knew you did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I only found out she had the surgery the day after when she posted on Facebook, here I am lying in TGH and into the ICU. I'm like, Lisa, you were supposed to tell me when the surgery is so I could give you the what to pack for the hospital list. Dummy. Yeah. But
so what do you tell people to pack for the journey list? Because people, and that's why I want to have you come back, because I really want to talk more about the other experiences, but up to the ones that you're talking about so far. These are not small things. What do you pack for that? What helps you along the way? Is there something that you can tell somebody, pack this?
You need to have either a friend or a circle of friends that are your cheerleaders.
Yeah.
The world will take any opportunity to tear you down. So you don't need to surround yourself with people that'll tear you down. It's not too hard to find them. You need to surround yourself with people that bring you up. And I'm blessed. I have a core group of friends that I can call and cry on, whine to, bitch to. Somebody will show up with a pint of Ben & Jerry's, pick your flavor, whatever.
Right.
And a spoon.
Right. Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's, somebody will say, just, let it out. And I let them be my strength. And when I'm strong, I let myself be their strength.
That's right.
So, we all grow. We all get to grow from it.
I think that's one of the best parts about it all, is that, especially when you have this collection, and isn't it amazing how, you can be told failure, but when you have this, isn't that like the greatest, like the thing that makes you rich, to have this, and, it's not even, you never even talk about how many you need. You just need, what's enough? You need one. You need, that's one place where quality always matters more than anything else. Yeah. And having that type of a, it's not even a safety net, because you are also part of that safety net. So you're not only saying surround yourself by people, you're also saying help people.
Well, yeah.
Like, that's what I'm hearing you say.
Well,
like, it
can't be one way. You have to give back.
I bet you've also asked them the exact same thing. They'd reflect on you the exact same way. If I hadn't had Franceen, you already mentioned one person, at least, right? And it's a beautiful thing that you give yourself to, that becomes a part of, really ultimately what's yours. And that matters most. And it turns out it's more life related than anything else related, right? And these are your friends, whether you're in Montreal, whether you're on the other side, you're on the moon, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Now, like I said, core group of people, 40 years. We've seen each other through marriages, one divorce, fertility issues, issues with kids, addiction issues with kids, addiction issues between us.
If somebody doesn't have that, what's a step or two you think they can take to start building that?
Well,
last sort of thought.
Yeah, my late father did a lot of...
It's so worth having it, right?
Yeah, my late father did a lot of charity work, and he would say to us that as bad as you think you have it, there's somebody who's got it worse. Okay, if you're cursing your secondhand car, someone's driving a bicycle. If you're cursing your bicycle, someone's walking with crutches. Okay, there's always somebody who has it worse. So the way to make yourself feel better about your station is to help out those that have less. Okay, it'll give you gratitude for where you're at. And, there's always a feel good in helping. And I have found that. I have found that if I volunteer with anything from the dog rescues to breast cancer groups, there's always somebody who benefits somewhat.
Where do you get the energy to go get up and do something, let alone for yourself, but for others, when you're so down, when you're so exhausted?
Well, yeah. As human beings, you learn this when you study psychology, we're all motivated to move forward. One-celled creatures move forward. And so being a multi-celled creature, we do the same thing. So you're going to wallow, and that may be a day, a month, longer, I don't know. But at some point, you know that you've got to move forward. And, you got to meet your basic human needs, too. So at that point, you pull yourself together and say, okay, baby steps. If all you did today was get out of bed and drink your coffee. Good on you. Somebody had said to me to put that as number 1 on my to-do list for every day was drink coffee, because at least I can tick it off. Say I did something.
I heard that about making your bed too.
Yeah,
Something.
Did something. That's it. So, that's it. You find ways to motivate and reward yourself for moving along. Because it has to be internal. You can't look externally for validation all the time. Everyone's got their own problems. Everybody's looking at their own navel. You've got to take care of yourself. And I discovered that through therapy. I said, oh, everyone's looking at me, the failure. And the therapist said, nope, everyone's looking in their own mirror and saying, look at me, the failure. So they're not so interested in you. They're feeling it for themselves.
Right.
So, people are not as interested in your problems as you think they are. They're interested in their own problems. And one way to make your problems seem less is to listen to everybody else's. My grandmother used to say that. If you sat in a circle and everyone shared their problems, you'd grab yours and run. Yeah. Because it's also what you're comfortable with. It's been yours, so you own it. But, you find that you've got to move forward because, it's the shark, move forward or die, right? And I've told that to people about myself, is that I think of myself like a shark. It's keep moving, just keep swimming, move forward.
I heard that in a movie once.
Yeah. Well, Disney got it. There are memes for a reason. That they do have some validity.
Thank you, Franceen.
Thanks. You made me cry today. Why'd you do that?
You know what? You got me close here. But you know what? I really appreciate you taking the time, walking me through this in such like I feel it. I'm there. And some of these moments, when we're going through, let's call it growth, right? Nobody can say that to you at that moment. And still, as far as I believe, I don't really think you can define it in that moment as growth, unless you take it and do something with it, right? It's like clay. You can take it and just throw it away, or you can turn it into a beautiful pot. You've been given clay, like lots of clay, and you're making a beautiful pot. So when these experiences come along, you've been given the clay, but you still got to mold it into something. You still got to use your heart. You still got to use your imagination. And you keep, if there's any confirmation in all of this, it's, you've been given a lot of clay, but you got a great imagination, and you're really building up like amazing pots, or this amazing pot that's turning out to be like super cool. So it's not just the growth automatically, coming your way as a favor. You're not going to go back to these people and go, hey, thank you, by the way, for putting me through that. That's the clay part. But the pot that you make it is like fantastic. And I really appreciate you just like really talking about that specifically. That's not easy to do. And so I really I appreciate you very much.
Thanks.
Coming here today.
Thank you. No, I actually have thanked some people for putting me in the positions where I had to make a choice or where they made the choice for me.
Crazy.
Well, I have this belief that we all end up where we're supposed to be. This is preordained that I end up on this path. And I had to jump over a few fences and crawl through a few bramble bushes, but this is where I'm supposed to be. And I'm grateful for everybody, good experience or not, that kind of pushed me in that direction.
At least one more episode. Honestly, thank you so much.